My name's Amata, and in this Red Gamer Tech video I'm here with the latest from the gaming world for you. You might wonder where I've been over the last few days. I've been enjoying some fresh hot pool action. Well, I've been enjoying a little break myself in Amsterdam, but got back yesterday. Been much better after a well-earned sleep. What do I have for you today? Well, we're going to kick things off with a trip to Camp Xbox, as we have some comments from Satya Nadella, who has said that the Xbox has the highest engagement currently on the market out of all the consoles, which is pretty interesting. Then we're going to move on to the Xbox software and services revenue, which has increased rather significantly. Then we're going to move on to a piece which is a little bit older, but unfortunately I wasn't able to cover it before I left, but I do definitely want to mention it because loot boxes have been declared illegal in Belgium. Then we're going to move on to Norway, who have reported several developers for not complying with EU consumer laws. As I said though, we're going to start things off with Satya Nadella. So as I said in the introduction to this video, Satya has basically said that Xbox is the console with the highest engagement currently on the market. Now he made these comments during the company's most recent financial call with investors when asked about, growth and all that sort of stuff in the gaming market. And here's what he had to say, quote, "So first is, the console itself is the highest engagement console out in the marketplace. So anytime a new game, whether it's first party or third party releases, the fact that Xbox is where the best engagement is driven benefits us. So as a platform owner, that's a great growth area for us. But we don't stop there because now we have, whether it's Xbox Live, whether it's Game Pass or Mixer, these are all additional opportunities to really serve the gamer as they play more games or watch games on different platforms. So that's another big opportunity. But the last one, which I think is new and is something which is already playing its dividends on the Azure growth side, is we've taken all the knowledge of what it means to build any one of these first-party titles of ours and building it as a PaaS service, I guess, in Azure for game developers. And the PlayFab acquisition speaks directly to that. So these are all the various levers we have in gaming, and you'll see it in the NPC segment, and you'll see it, as I said, increasingly over time, even on Azure. Now you might wonder, okay, that's all great and all, but what does that actually mean? And basically, having the best engagement means that the average Xbox gamer spends more money than the average PlayStation or Nintendo gamer does in the Xbox ecosystem. So whether that's on games themselves, DLC, micropayments, that sort of thing, hardware like the Elite controller, DLC, all that sort of stuff, that's all counted in. So basically, while obviously the Xbox has less players than that of the PlayStation, they're getting a higher level of engagement than both Nintendo and Sony in this particular field. And this is why Microsoft are so keen to get you into the Microsoft ecosystem. This is why they've been doing that cross-play initiative, or at least one of the reasons why they're doing cross-play and all that sort of stuff, because they just want you in that ecosystem. And obviously, clearly, that plus all the other strategies they've been doing have been playing dividends with these results. But we're going to move on to our next topic now, which is actually about the core financial results from Microsoft. So these results are for the third quarter, which ended March the 31st, 2018, and unfortunately there is no hardware information here, but we do see some impressive increases for software in Camp Xbox. So gaming revenue increased at $345 million, that's obviously dollars, or 18% year over year, and was driven by Xbox software and services revenue of 24%. Now, it must be said that this is mainly from third-party title strength. However, that doesn't necessarily change that doesn't change at all the end result, but it is worth noting. However, we also saw a flat figure for the Xbox Live user numbers, which still remain at 59 million, which is what we saw in Q2 of this year. However, when compared to last year, that's year over year, we see an increase of 7 million. Now, total revenue for more personal computing, which is the department which houses Xbox, was $9.9 billion for the quarter. That is actually up $1.1 billion or 13% year over year. It is slightly down compared to last quarter, but it is an increase, as I already said, to last year. So gaming revenue itself for the 9 months of the current fiscal year has increased 658 million or 9%, and once again driven by Xbox software and services growth of 15%. Now, once again, there was no hardware information about how the Xbox One or the X is doing, so you're going to have to speculate that one, unfortunately. But overall, revenue for Microsoft was at 26.8 billion, a 16% increase year over year, and net income was 7.4 billion, 35% increase year over year. Basically making all the money. So let's move on to a piece which, as I say, is a few days old, but I definitely want to discuss because loot boxes have been declared illegal in Belgium. So what do we have here? Well, the Belgian Gaming Commission looked at Star Wars Battlefront 2, FIFA 18, Overwatch and CSGO, and only Battlefront 2, ironically, was found to be not in violation of their gambling legislation, probably because all of the offending materials, which arguably started this whole thing, have been removed from the game. However, they have determined that Overwatch, CSGO and FIFA 18 are all games of chance or have elements of games of chance, so they will be subject to Belgian gaming law. So according to a statement from Minister of Justice Cohen Greens, those games that I just mentioned, basically all of them except Star Wars, are illegal, and they basically said that their loot boxes need to be removed. And if, but you might ask, okay, what happens if they don't? They quote, risk a prison sentence of up to 5 years and a fine of up to 800,000 euros. Now, where minors are involved, these punishments can be doubled. So, no disrespect to Overwatch, because I poured way too much time into that game, probably approaching over 150 hours at this point. There's probably going to be more young kids in that than there are in, say, CSGO, just for instance. So, the reason for this is the reasoning that most people have given, that the impact that loot boxes could have on young people is quite concerning for these lawmakers, and Cohen once again said, quote, it is often children who come into contact with such systems and we cannot allow that. And he said, quote, this is Cohen again by the way, we have already taken numerous measures to protect both minors and adults against the influence of, among other things, gambling advertising. That is why we must also ensure that children and adults are not confronted with games of chance when they're looking for fun in a video game. Now, naturally, there are going to be talks with video game publishers and developers. Obviously, there needs to be a frank and open discussion between the Belgian authorities and obviously the developers of not only these games, but any other future games that have similar elements that might come under fire, so that obviously they can come to some sort of accord. So what's actually going to happen here, I hear you ask, and I'm kind of wondering the same thing, and obviously I can't predict the future, but I can speculate, as you guys can as well. I think, to be honest, there is a good chance they may just remove the games from sale entirely, but that would be a little bit like cutting off your nose to spite your face, because while yes, it would take a lot of time to remove these elements from these games, you would argue they're still losing out a lot of money because, well, people would not be able to literally buy these games at all in an entire country. Yeah, it's not the USA or anything, but it still is lots of people, lots of players, and obviously what happens to the people who already own this game? Like that is possible, but I would think that's a sort of, in a case of emergency, break glass kind of option for the developers. Will they actually remove them? Well, it looks like they're going to have to, unless they want someone in their higher ups to, spend time in prison, or, the fine they probably don't care about. 800,000 euros is not really that much money when you're talking about, Blizzard and EA and that sort of developer status of the amount of money they make. But obviously the prison time is definitely a concern, and obviously the hit they would take their reputation, that sort of thing. So they might ask for some sort of compromise with the Belgian government. They might ask that, some sort of wall be put up, that sort of thing. So if you're in Belgium, you literally cannot access the loot box portion of the game. There are obviously numerous ways that this can be dealt with, but it's going to be interesting to see. And what's going to be more interesting is the implications from this. Obviously, they are by far from the only ones, looking at loot boxes and seeing whether or not they do actually fall into gambling as a legal definition. But obviously, this is following shortly on from a similar ruling in the Netherlands itself by the Dutch Gaming Authority, who basically said that 4 games now need a gambling license to operate in the Netherlands, which are FIFA 18, Dota 2, PUBG and Rocket League, due to their loot box nature. So the more interesting thing is going to be seeing the ramification of this, the butterfly that flapped its wings, as it were. What sort of results we're going to get from this. Are we going to see the UK or the USA perhaps revisit their original thoughts, which are loot boxes don't currently fall under the legal definition of gambling, or we might not. We're really going to have to see. But enough with that, let's finish off with Norway, shall we? So, what's going on here, I ask? Well, the Norwegian Consumer Commission has filed a complaint against EA, Nintendo, Sony and Valve for not complying with European consumer legislation. So basically what's happened here is that their digital storefronts were non-compliant with the EU consumer law statute for right of withdrawal and failing to offer refunds. Now you may recall that Valve fell foul of a similar ruling in Australia, where before, when Steam did not have a refund policy to speak of, they were actually in breach of Australian consumer law and of course have been fined after finally having run out of appeals. So basically what we have here is that EU consumer law states that a customer has a 14-day window after making a purchase to request and receive a refund. And Steam, Origin and the PlayStation Store failed to comply with the law by not obtaining, quote, express consent from the consumer and, quote, acknowledgement. They thereby lose their right of withdrawal. Now, of course, we do now have a system in place like this on Steam if you played the game for less than 2 hours. But obviously that wasn't always the case. But the NCC's issue is that when you buy a game, this isn't actually made clear to you before you hand over your cash. If you didn't pay attention to gaming media, if you just got into PC gaming, or you're young, or whatever, you might not know that you only have under 2 hours playtime to go, do you know what, I don't like this game, or wow, this game is broken, I can't play it on my system, or I can't run this game at all, I didn't read the specs properly, or whatever. And I've got a statement here from the NCC to GI.biz who said, quote, the consumer must acknowledge the policy by ticking a box or something similar, and action from the consumer is required. So basically what they're saying here is that Steam will be in line with what they're asking if they simply inform people, hey, by the way, if you want a refund, you need to do it after you've played under 2 hours or you're not going to get it. That's all they're asking them to do. Nintendo, on the other hand, have come under fire for not accepting eShop cancellations of pre-orders before the game's release date. So they have been asked before to change this, but nothing was actually done. So the NCC have filed a formal complaint against the company. Now I do have a statement from the Director of Digital Services at the NCC, and he said that digital storefronts for games, quote, do not exist in a lawless vacuum. And he said of the companies EA, Nintendo, Sony and Valve, they are, quote, some of the largest entertainment companies in the world and have to observe laws and rules and honour consumer rights just like everyone else. So basically, Nintendo has to honour refunds for products that are not out yet. You know, perhaps you change your mind on a pre-order, that sort of thing. Steam has to tell people that, you know, they only have 2 hours, and Sony, I think, just needs to get a better refund policy, period. So we're gonna have to see what happens here. I'll keep you guys updated as per usual. So that is me done for this video. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.